Windows creaked open. Faces appeared, then vanished. Doors closed softly, one after another. Every movement carried caution. There were whispers, strange cries in the night, sudden illness, people dying without warning, but no one knew why. What would later be called the Black Death did not announce itself. It arrived quietly, carried by ships from the Black Sea. In late 1347, merchants fleeing war and unrest brought more than silk and spices. Hidden among their cargo was a disease that would move from port to port, and then far beyond. In 1347, long before anyone in Europe sensed what was approaching, merchant ships began slipping into the Mediterranean. When they reached the Sicilian port of Messina, many of the sailors on board were already dying. Others were dead. These were Genoese trading ships returning from the ports of the Black Sea. Their holds were filled with grain, hides, and goods meant for market. They were also carrying something unseen, rats, and the fleas living on them, infected with a bacterium that would later be called Yersinia pestis. By the time the ships were secured at the docks, the signs were already there. Some vessels arrived nearly empty of life, their crews gone or collapsed below deck. The cargo was unloaded anyway. The rats followed. Without warning or announcement, the plague entered Europe through the ordinary channels of trade. Back in town, the day unfolds as it always has. Market stalls open at sunrise. Bakers stack fresh loaves. Children dart between carts, laughing as they trade crumbs of bread. Merchants and villagers exchange coins, shake hands, and move on, unaware that with every touch, the unseen threat moves with them. No bells ring, no warnings are given. Yet the disease has already slipped past the harbor and into the narrow streets beyond. Messina, June 1347. A cloth merchant woke up shivering. His wife pulled another blanket over him. By midday, she couldn't get near him. The heat coming off his body felt like standing too close to a forge. That night, she wrapped him for burial alone because no one else would come near the house. It crept in like winter cold, that bone-deep chill you can't shake off. Then your head starts pounding. Your joints ache like you've been beaten. And then the heat comes. October 1347. A Genoese sailor named Giovanni Morelli collapsed in a Messina street. The people who saw him said he looked like he was cooking from the inside out. 2 men dragged him to the church of San Francesco. The priest took one look and barred the door. Morelli died before sunrise. They hauled his body to a ditch outside town and left him there. No one buried him. No one even closed his eyes. The fever killed fast, but what came after the fever, that's what made people run. A day after the fever hit, something else appeared. Hard lumps, black as tar, rising under the skin, armpits, groin, neck, big as hen's eggs, sometimes bigger. People called them God's mark. November 1347. A young woman was brought to the Florentine physician Tommaso del Garbo. Her family carried her through his door. She had a lump under her right arm the size of a small apple. Del Garbo wrote later, "I knew she was dead before I touched her." He bled her. It didn't help. He packed the swelling with herbs and animal fat. Nothing changed. It grew. 2 days in, she stopped talking. 3 days, she stopped breathing. Del Garbo burned everything he'd used, the tools, the linens, the bowl. Then he locked his door and refused to see another plague patient for the rest of his life. The lumps weren't just ugly. They were a clock, and everyone knew exactly how much time was left. There was a moment when you knew, not when the fever started, not when you found the first lump. It was later, when the fever wouldn't break. That's when you understood. December 1347. Luca Bianchi, a baker in Pisa, watched his 7-year-old son burn for 4 days straight. He changed the cold rags every hour, prayed every rosary he owned, made promises to God he had no way to keep. Fifth day, the boy opened his eyes, asked for water. Bianchi thought he'd witnessed a miracle. By sunset, the boy was gone. The plague didn't just kill people, it killed the idea that anyone could help. Physicians stopped making house calls. Priests stopped offering last rites. Families stopped believing tomorrow would be different. By early 1348, the thing people feared most wasn't the pain. It was the waiting. Once the fever took hold, the clock started ticking. And nobody, not the rich, not the faithful, not the desperate, could make it stop. The body had turned against itself. But the real nightmare wasn't how fast the plague killed. It was how powerless everyone felt watching it happen. And as 1348 arrived, that powerlessness was about to rip Europe apart. One city, one family, one person at a time. Next time, the city gates slam shut, the doctors flee, and the living start to envy the dead. Florence, February 1348. A physician named Gabriele de Mussi watched a mob drag a Jewish merchant through the Piazza della Signoria. The crowd screamed he'd poisoned the wells. De Mussi knew the man, had treated his kids. He also knew the wells had nothing to do with any of this. He just stood there, didn't say a word. Later he wrote, "I was scared they'd come for me next." When half your city's dying and nobody can tell you why, the human brain does what it's always done, finds someone to blame. The church said God was punishing humanity for its sins. Astrologers pointed to some planetary alignment back in March 1345. Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, all lined up wrong. Others blamed earthquakes in Italy, bad air, failed crops. But none of that felt real enough. People needed something they could actually see, someone they could actually stop. Strasbourg, spring of 1348. Word got around that Jewish families were poisoning the wells. Zero evidence. Didn't matter. February 14th, Valentine's Day, the city council rounded up every Jewish person they could find. Close to 2,000 people. Marched them to the cemetery and burned them alive. The plague kept killing, obviously. A month later, a third of Strasbourg was dead too. But they kept killing anyway. Because fear doesn't run on facts. It just needs a target. Some people flipped it around, turned the blame on themselves. If God was angry, maybe pain would fix it. Summer of 1348, these groups started showing up in Germany and the Low Countries. Called themselves the Flagellants. They'd march town to town, whipping themselves raw in the middle of public squares. 33 lashes. One for every year Christ lived. Sang hymns the whole time, thought the pain would cleanse them. Stopped the plague, proved they loved God enough. There was this chronicler in Tournai, Gilles Le Muissis, watched one of their processions roll through. He wrote, "They beat themselves till the blood ran down their legs. The plague killed them anyway." By fall, Pope Clement VI shut them down. Not because it didn't work, because the Flagellants were getting more popular than the church. Avignon, March 1348. A baker named Etienne Clavel, healthy on Monday, running a fever by Wednesday. Thursday, his neighbor, guy he'd known 15 years, walks up to the city guard and says Clavel's whole family should be locked in their house and left to die. Guard nailed the door. Clavel, his wife, 3 kids, still inside. Week later, the neighbor breaks the door down himself. Not to help, to see what he could steal. Wasn't anything worth taking. Just bodies. People were desperate for anybody who could stop this thing, so they turned to the only ones left, claiming they had answers. The doctors. Doctors in 1348 had theories. Plenty of them. Bad air, miasma, messed up bodily humors, planets out of whack. They tried everything. Bloodletting, leeches, burning herbs, drinking crushed emeralds mixed in wine. None of it did a damn thing. Paris medical faculty at the university, basically the best medical minds in Europe, put out an official report in October 1348. Blamed the whole thing on planets lining up wrong 3 years earlier. Their cure: don't bathe. Opens your pores to bad air. Burn some juniper, maybe rosemary, and pray. By the time that report came out, half the people who wrote it were already dead. Some kept trying. They wore these long waxed coats, leather gloves, masks with beaks stuffed with herbs and vinegar. Thought it'd protect them from poisoned air. Made them look like some kind of predatory bird. Didn't help. Guy de Chauliac, surgeon to the Pope, treated plague patients all through 1348 in Avignon. Caught it himself. Somehow lived. Wrote afterward, "It was useless and shameful. We couldn't do anything, and most of us were too scared to even visit the sick." So they stopped showing up. The people who were supposed to know what to do just walked away. Everything people counted on was falling apart. The church, the doctors, the law. Priests wouldn't give last rites. Physicians ran for the countryside. Town councils couldn't meet because half of them were dead. No explanations, no authority, no hope. People did what humans always do when meaning collapses. They either turned on each other or they just gave up. By summer 1348, Europe wasn't just fighting a plague. It was ripping itself apart trying to understand it. The disease didn't just kill people, it killed trust, killed structure, killed belief. And when the things holding a society together disappear, what's left isn't order. It's just survival. Coming up, bodies piling faster than anyone can bury them. The carts stop running. And the living have to choose, stay human or stay alive. Venice, July 1348. Marco Contarini drove a death cart for 6 weeks straight. Every morning, same routine. Ring the bell, wait for doors to open, load the bodies. One Thursday he stops at a house on Calle del Forno. He's been past it 1,000 times. Door swings open. His brother's standing there, holding their mother. Marco said later he barely recognized her. Didn't cry. Just put her on the cart and moved to the next house. Every plague city had the same soundtrack. You'd hear them rolling in before sunrise, wood wheels scraping cobblestone, bells clanging. Sometimes a voice yelling, "Bring out your dead." Sometimes nothing at all. Early on, people had dignity about it. Wrapped bodies in clean linen, put flowers on top. By the middle of 1348, forget it. Bodies came out, however, naked, rigid, 2 or 3 stacked on one stretcher like firewood. Florence, merchant named Marcione di Copo Stefani, kept a diary the whole time. Every morning he'd sit at his window and count bodies on the carts going by. Kept tallies, stopped in August. Said counting didn't matter anymore because the numbers stopped making sense. Cart drivers? Mostly criminals. Cities emptied the prisons, offered freedom if they'd haul corpses. Nobody else would do it. In Siena, a guy named Agnolo di Tura ended up burying his own 5 kids. Dug the holes himself. He wrote, "Nobody cried. Bells didn't ring. Nobody gave a damn. We were all just waiting for our turn." Avignon, September 1348. Cart driver named Philippe Reynard had a route through the fish market district. Same 20 houses every single day. He knew which doors would open, which ones stayed shut. One morning he rolls up to Henri Gasquet's place. Baker. Used to slip Renard's kids leftover bread on Sundays. Door opens. Gasquet's wife is standing there. She just points inside. Renard walks in, finds Gasquet face down on the kitchen floor. Cold, goes upstairs, 2 daughters in bed. Dead. Renard carried them out one by one. Loaded, all 3. Wife didn't say a word, just shut the door. He never saw her again. Carts kept going. But something else was vanishing. Harder to see, harder to measure. Plague didn't just kill people, it killed sound. All the noise that made a city feel alive, just gone. Barcelona, spring 1348. Chronicler named Ramon Muntaner walked through the city middle of the day, wrote that it was so quiet he could hear his own pulse. Work songs went first. Dock workers singing while they loaded ships, women at the river doing laundry, masons setting stone. Plague killed the people, songs died right along with them. Paris, Notre Dame had this boys' choir, 40 kids. By October 1348, 3 left. Choir master was a priest, Guillaume de Michaud. Said he couldn't stand hearing them anymore. 3 voices just reminded him of the 37 that weren't there. Shut it down in November. De Michaud locked the sheet music in a chest. Never taught another student. Schools emptied out. University of Bologna. Over 1,000 students in 1347. End of 1348. Under 100. Most dead. Rest ran. Law professor Giovanni D'Andrea kept teaching through spring, lost his wife in March, daughter in April, son in May. June, he stopped showing up. Student found him 3 days later, dead at his desk, still had the pen in his hand. Weddings stopped. Hard to celebrate tomorrow when tomorrow might not come. Orvieto, wedding set for August 15th, 1348. Feast of the Assumption. Big deal. Rich merchant's daughter marrying a banker's son. Church decorated. Food ready. Neither one showed. Both dead within a week of each other. Families called it off. Never rescheduled. Church record just says, abandoned to God's will. What the plague took, you couldn't count it in corpses. It was in the space where living used to happen. By fall 1348, the silence had actual weight to it. You could feel it. People stopped talking in the streets, not because they had nothing to say, they were just scared that talking might jinx them. Giovanni Boccaccio, poet from Florence, survived it. Wrote about walking around his city after. Said it felt like someone had scooped everything out. The living envied the dead their silence. That's what he wrote. Carts rolled till there was nobody left to push them. Silence kept spreading till whole cities were swallowed. Plague didn't just kill Europe. It erased the texture, the routines, the noise, all those tiny human moments that make life livable. And what rushed in to fill that space wasn't peace, it was fear. Coming up, more bodies than graves. The ground can't hold them anymore. And the people still breathing have to make choices nobody should ever face. England, spring 1351. A manor lord named Sir Thomas Hungerford called in his field workers for planting season, same as every year. Except this time, when he told them what their wages would be, a man named John Walsham just shook his head. Said no, not for that price. Hungerford threatened him with the stalks. Walsham turned around and walked to the neighboring estate. Got hired that afternoon for 3 times what Hungerford was offering. And there was nothing Hungerford could do about it. The world that ended in 1348 didn't come back. What replaced it was something nobody saw coming. By 1351, the plague had burned itself out across most of Europe. 50 million people dead, maybe more. Half the continent, gone. The survivors stepped out into a world that felt like someone else's dream. In the countryside, whole estates sat empty. No one to work the land, no one to collect the rents. In Tuscany, a landowner named Lapo di Giovanni Nicolini wrote in 1350 that he owned 12 farms. Only 2 still had tenants. The rest were just empty. Fields turning back to forest,